Hello everyone, welcome back to Big Man, Big Books. Today I'd like to give you my review of my new favourite book, potentially, that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Roll the intro. Lonesome Dove is the story of a cattle drive, an epic journey from the Rio Grande to the highlands of the Montana that will try men's souls as they attempt to carve out a new life in the last remaining wilderness. Augustus McCrae and W.F. Cole are former Texas Rangers, retired and becalmed after long years of putting down the Comanches. Gus is the romantic, a reluctant ranger who fills his days with whiskey and the sound of his own voice, reminiscing about the old days. Cole is devoted to hard work and silence, driven, demanding, and obsessed with the dream of creating his own empire. Larry McMurtry's intensely powerful novel brings alive the never-before most enduring of American myths, the frontier, recreated in a magnificent story of heroism, love, honor, loyalty, and betrayal. As I say, it's Adam. Today I'd like to talk about the fantastic novel by Larry McMurtry, that being Lonesome Dove. Now, this is a novel I've not shied away from saying that I've been quite intimidated to start. In fact, I tried reading this last year and read a couple of pages and just thought, I'm not sure if this is going to be for me. This felt very intimidating and just really kind of did not know where I was going to move with it, to be honest. So I put it off, I'll be honest with yourself. And then more recently, I'd replayed Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. That kind of got me in the mood for like Western genre and kind of historical fiction. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to pick up Lonesome Dove and just see what it's all about. Not to kind of give you guys a preemptive look into what my thoughts are, but my word, this is the best book I think I've ever read.
Oh, damn!
It is truly a masterpiece. I'm going to go into a bit more detail regarding this and why I feel it's so amazing, but it truly is fantastic, and it really, really has moved me in so many ways, to the point now where I'm kind of a little bit lost for what to read next, because how can you top such a fantastic story? To give you guys a brief summary as to what Lonesome Dove is about, the story follows multiple different characters, but the main protagonists of our stories are W.F. Cole and Gus McCrae, who are former Rangers who now run kind of like a cattle farm type thing, and decide that they are going to be the first Rangers or the first cowboys to move a huge amount of cattle, 3,000 cattle, from the border of Mexico all the way up to Yellowstone in kind of California. I think that's where that is. At this point, this has not been something that has been done by anyone to their knowledge. So this is a huge task and really is an epic scale event in terms of the sheer amount of time this is going to take. As you can imagine, things don't go completely to plan, and a lot of the different kind of scenarios come up. Various different characters are introduced. Various characters meet an untimely demise, and the story really focuses around friendship, loyalty, love, and just the way people are and how people can be, and the complexities surrounding people's emotions and their lives. It is truly like a really beautiful story, and Larry McMurtry is really great at understanding people. Not every character in this story is super likable. There's a lot of people that can come across as quite selfish in their kind of POV chapters, but equally that is realistic. That's kind of how people are in general. However, by the end of the story, you fall in love with every single character in this story. There is no one that doesn't have a perfectly sort of fleshed out kind of start to finish story, basically. Even the kind of the side characters you learn to love. It's really, really a fantastic kind of picture of these amazing people going through such a tough time in their lives. You know, this is not easy living, you know, in terms of what they're going through. So many different themes that are touched on here around ignorance and prejudice and fear-mongering. These are kind of themes that you kind of wouldn't expect to see in this book. This is not a new book. This came out in the early 80s. As a result, though, Larry McMurtry manages to really kind of hone in on those facts and kind of really change the perspective of a lot of these characters, you know, on this long journey. Let's talk about some more kind of pros, what I I particularly liked really about the story. I'm predominantly a fantasy reader. I read a lot of fantasy books. It's my main genre. This is as close to a fantasy story as you're going to get with any kind of Western. I once saw someone talk about Lonesome Dove, and now I've read this, I kind of understand it more, that, you know, in kind of America, for example, they don't really have kind of a set genre that is reminiscent of their country. So, for example, to kind of put it in more perspective, fantasy books mostly kind of have a backdrop that is very reminiscent of kind of medieval England, you know, in that respect. There's not really a lot of like fantasy books that have like a setting of like kind of early American sort of era, and I would say that a Western as a genre is kind of America's answer to the epic scale Tolkien style kind of stories. The quest, as it were, that they're on is just as epic in scale and epic in kind of, you know, the magic of it, really. You know, it's really, really incredible what these characters go through, and the endurance they have to sort of face with this kind of situation that they're in. The story had me laughing, had me crying, had me absolutely enthralled through and through, and I was so engrossed in this story that I just did not want it to end. I'll be honest with yourself, I took my time with this book. I started this, I think, in March, so I've literally been reading it for, you know, a good sort of 6 weeks now, I believe. And not because it's boring or any means, I mean, it is a long book, but I've read the same length, if not longer, books in quicker time. It's just been so entertaining as a story that I've just not wanted it to end. Let's talk about some of our main characters. So Gus and Cole, who are the main kind of protagonists, the leaders of the group, I guess. These two are like chalk and cheese. They could not be more different, but there's this kind of mutual respect and friendship for each other. It's really great to see, and really sort of interesting dynamic to see how they work together, and it's crystal clear that these two have gone through a lot, and, you know, in under different circumstances would probably never be together, but the pure history that they share, even though that's not really kind of explored too much other than odd past conversations and discussions of things that have happened previously, it's crystal clear that these two are as tight as thieves. They are, you know, in it to the end on this one. However, they may massively disagree and argue at times. Larry McMurtry is really great at making these characters very believable, very kind of sincere, and it's, you know, very heartfelt, you know, as the story goes on, not to spoil things, events that go on, and really just incredible kind of storytelling that we see in development from the characters. Personally, I very much enjoyed the character of Gus. I thought Gus was absolutely fantastic. In the beginning, I thought he was, you know, kind of the comic relief, didn't really kind of take him too seriously. And then sort of midway through the book, some events happen, again, not to spoil anything, but he really kind of shows his all and shows that he's actually very capable, able to kind of get the job done. And it was really interesting to see. It really kind of changed my perspective on this character, sort of as the book was kind of, you know, hitting the middle mark. Cole, on the other hand, is just the prototype for toxic masculinity, and to see his development throughout the story, even though it's not a great massive change, was really interesting to see. And Larry McMurtry wrote him in such a way where you know that was intentional. You know, it felt very much kind of, you know, to kind of combat that sort of stigma in men, which is, again, for a book written when it was written, was really superb. And, you know, it's very reminiscent of what a lot of men would have been like at that time, and still are today. He's very rigid, very determined, very married to his work, whereas Gus is just the total opposite end of that, does not want to be working, would rather sit around, be lazy. Again, these two, their interactions really made me laugh, and their interactions with other characters as well was fantastic. Even the sort of female characters within the story were written really well, very reminiscent of kind of the era in terms of how a lot of women were kind of, you know, had to sort of survive, really. A lot of discussion around kind of prostitution and, you know, that sort of nature of things, where it just seems to be the absolute norm. Really, really interesting, and really great character development from every character in this story. I can't tell you enough how much I've enjoyed this story. All the twists and turns of the journey, the kind of the epic kind of scale of the journey they have to take with all this cattle that they've taken is, you know, incredible, and it really, really is superb. But I can't big this up enough. If you're going to read a Western any time in your life, I would certainly suggest Lonesome Dove should be where you get started. In terms of overall vibe of this story, in terms of kind of what to sort of summarize it to sort of compare it to, it's a tricky one because again, I've not read a great deal of westerns, but in terms of what I have read, I can honestly say that it's got the same kind of vibe as something like Lord of the Rings. Any kind of quest related fantasy story is very, very, very much similar to Lonesome Dove, and I honestly would say if you're a fantasy fan, and you enjoy kind of exploring a little bit outside your genre, Lonesome Dove's going to be absolutely on the table for a great story, especially if you like cowboys. So I honestly think it's a win for everyone. I've enjoyed the story that much. I have actually done some research and found that Larry McMurtry has wrote other books within the series, namely prequels about Cole and Gus in their early years as Rangers, which again, sign me up. I can't wait to give them a go. So I'll be cracking on with those books, and hopefully if they're any good, I'll be reviewing them as well. Normally I fill this section with any cons that I have, anything that I felt would be better, kind of if they missed something out or taken anything out. I honestly can't think of anything, and that's really, really silly because normally there should be something, but at the same time I feel as though it's no point me trying to just make up something if there's nothing that I found was bad. So I've really enjoyed the story. I had the same feeling when I read The Stand. I had the same feeling when I read 11/22/63. Just really, really just enjoyed the journey with these characters and seeing them develop and seeing the kind of grueling task of taking all these cows to the top end of America from Texas. It's been fantastic, and I honestly feel as though that it is one of the greatest books ever written. It feels as though like something that you should have read in school. It's got that sort of vibe, like you should have done an exam on it in school, maybe. I can't explain why it feels that way. It may be something to do with the fact that I read Of Mice and Men in school, which is set a little bit after this. So other than that though, I think it was a fantastic go, and I honestly think it's going to be one that everyone's going to remember is an absolute classic, if it's not already considered that. I've got 2 copies of the book, technically 3 because I downloaded it on my Kindle as well, but I bought it in America when I visited New York, and I paid way too much for the copy that I got, which was secondhand and beat up, and I spent like $20 on it. I don't know why I did that, and then I picked up this copy for like £1, and it's like in perfect condition. So yeah, I don't know why I did that, but if anyone fancies a copy of Lonesome Dove, let me know and I'll send it you. To summarise, Lonesome Dove is the story of friendship, love and loyalty, and the sheer willpower people will go through to achieve their goals, for right or for wrong, and how that even though if you don't have magic and wizards and sorcery, a quest can be as simple as taking cattle from one end of the country to another. Have you read Lonesome Dove? What do you think of it? And let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what people have to say about the book. Thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.